All right, everyone. Welcome to a what I think is going to be a really fascinating group of videos. And if you're noticing my voice is an octave down, it's because I'm getting over the flu and not me trying to do a James Earl Jones impersonation. But I'm really happy, really excited, in fact, and honored to be joined by some of the founders of an organization that I think is really going to do some of the most important work in the developing world of Western esotericism. And that's the work of bridging the gap between academics, scholars, and practitioners in the world of Western esotericism. And this organization is called RENSEP, and I'm really excited about what you guys are up to, and I'm really excited to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you for
Thanks for
having us,
having me.
Justin.
Absolutely, what's wonderful. Andrea and Bernd, would you guys mind just doing a little introduction, just to let folks know who you are personally and professionally before we turn to RENSEP as an organization?
Mhm.
Sure.
Okay, shall I start?
Yeah,
Sure.
go.
Okay, so my name is Andrea Centore. I am the co-founder and managing director of the Research Network for the Study of Esoteric Practices, otherwise known as RENSEP. I have a background in translation studies and religious studies. I hold a master's degree in both fields, and my research interest lies in the intersection between Islamic and Jewish esotericism, with a particular focus on Jewish Kabbalah and Sufi Lectrism in the 12th and 13th centuries.
Fascinating. Yeah, Bernd.
So my name is Bernd-Christian Otto. I'm a scholar of religion. I work at the University of Erlangen-Nuremberg in Germany. I also founded a Center for Advanced Studies there called Alternative Rationalities and Esoteric Practices from a Global Perspective. This center is running since 2022. And I did my PhD at the University of Heidelberg in 2009 with a study on the conceptual history of magic. And since then, my focus lies on the study and history of magic. So I've published extensively on the conceptual history, but also the ritual history of what I call the Western learned magic. And in recent years, I've moved more and more from historical studies into present day study of magic. So I also did field work, interviews, participant observation, and also practitioner scholarship. So I'm exploring modern and present day magic in the past years. And this also relates to the agenda of the Center for Advanced Studies in Nuremberg, in Erlangen, where the focus is largely contemporary, but on top of that, also global. So we advocate the global turn in the study of esotericism. So I'm really, since a few years, working contemporary and globally on esoteric practices with a large group. We are over 20 people usually. And out of these endeavors also came the impulse to found RENSEP together with Andrea a few years ago, which has yet another slightly different angle, which we can discuss now.
Yeah, Andrea, could you tell us a little bit about what RENSEP is? What's the sort of agenda? What does the organization do? How is it structured? Say a little
Mhm.
bit about RENSEP as an organization.
Yes, so RENSEP is a non-profit organization based in the UK, whose purpose is to promote and advance the interdisciplinary and comparative study of esoteric practices from a global perspective. I would say that RENSEP is four things at once. It is a network of scholars from different disciplines and practitioners. It is an online platform, which is the cognitive and interactional space where practitioners and scholars can meet and exchange their perspectives on esoteric practices. It is also a charitable organization that funds innovative and disruptive research into esoteric practices. Maybe we can say a bit more about the projects that we have funded so far later in the discussion. And finally, it is a public education provider. We regularly publish blog articles, video content, and we have recently launched a peer-reviewed academic journal titled Praxis Knowledge, which focuses on practitioner scholarship and on the co-production of knowledge between scholars and practitioners. I would say that The main objectives that Bernd and I have for RENSEP are, first of all, to shift the boundaries of accepted knowledge, as I said, by funding innovative and disruptive research projects, and to build a cross-epistemic hive mind that we hope can foster the creation of new relations and opportunities for the study of esoteric practices.
I mean, it's a massive mandate and a very exciting mandate, I have to say. Bernd, was there anything you particularly want to add before we get into the more specific aspects of those, I suppose, four different elements that go into RENSEP?
No, I think Andrea's summary was perfect. I would only add one tiny thing at the end, namely that we are also interested in destabilizing the boundaries between scholar and practitioner, and thereby also build bridges between these very different camps, if you like.
Mm-hmm. And this is something I'm interested in. I've had people like Marco Visconti and Aaron Leach and other people on the channel to try to do some of that work myself, because I also find that these very siloed epistemological structures are counterproductive to the production of knowledge. And it's very exciting to know that there, again, I think it will be very exciting for many people to learn that there's an entire organization dedicated to doing just that. Would you guys mind just expanding a little bit on those four different areas? Because there's a lot there, and maybe people kind of went over some folks' head, but maybe if you could to sort of extrapolate on those four things a little bit by maybe giving some examples of the kind of things that RENSEP is currently doing.
Yeah, I mean, there's we have been doing a lot, so I will certainly forget some of the projects we have been working on. So jump in the discussion when you feel like it, Bernd. But maybe I can start with the research projects that we have funded since we launched the RENSEP. So RENSEP was launched in June 2023 officially during the ESWE conference in Malmö. And since then, we have funded 6 research projects. The first one is an experimental study into the efficacy of sigil magic. This is a project that we funded in collaboration with the BL Foundation and the Institute of Noetic Sciences. So Dean Radin has been the main investigator, and this project, which just terminated, Dean is currently publishing a peer-reviewed article based on the data he has collected and the analysis he has done on the data. So the project seeks to explore one interpretation of the quantum observer effect. So it's a study on mind-matter interaction based on the practice of sigil magic. And we are very excited about this project because it's the first experimental study on a magical practice. Then we have funded the field work of Monica Hirmer. She's an anthropologist, and she has done extensive field work in India in the Srividya tradition. And during the summer of 2023, she has worked on the practice of Srividya Tantrism in Europe. So she has done fieldwork in Italy and the UK. We have supported her work. We have supported the work of another anthropologist, Maria Villanueva Pinal, who focuses on the Serbian occultist Mikhail Slavinsky. She has studied the correspondence between Slavinsky and other occultists of his time, Michael Berthiaud and Kenneth Grant. And we have 3 other projects, if you can help me, Bernd, because I'm not sure I remember all of them.
So our second biggest project is what we call Art as Esoteric Practice Stipend. We launched this early last year, and we had over 60 applications, and the prize winner is Natasha Moody, a young British artist who has, over the course of the past year, produced art as esoteric practice, and while monitoring her process through monthly reports and so on. And some of her work has been exhibited last November on a big conference organized in collaboration between KC, which is my center in Erlangen, the HHP in Amsterdam, and the Cini Foundation in Venice, and RENSEP. So this project is almost finished, and now she's wrapping up also the reports and turning it into a small book. So this was also a fairly huge project we funded. And there are two more things.
Yeah, we have the Tandem Paper Prize.
The Tandem Paper Prize, yeah.
Which is a prize awarded to a paper co-authored by a scholar and a practitioner. So the first Tandem Paper Prize was awarded to Jeff Howard and Stephen Patterson. So they have worked on the cultus sabbati.
But we have tuned down a bit because it was quite an intense first year. And now we are evaluating and going with a bit of a slower speed. And this is only the research projects that we funded. We also do a lot of other stuff. Should I move on, or do you have questions concerning the funding?
Yeah, so the last project is the PhD
True.
research, yes, of Jing Liu.
Yeah.
We have supported the first year of the PhD research of Jing Liu. So she's a PhD student focusing on the transmission of I Ching divination in China. So her father is a I Ching diviner, and she's studying the transmissions of those practices. Yeah.
By the way, if I may add that we launched the new call for the Tandem Paper Prize, and the deadline is March 31. So if one of the viewers are inclined to write a tandem paper, it's still the round is still going on, so you can submit your tandem paper on the RENSEP website. And the price is publication in Praxis Knowledge in our journal, plus $500, I think, or is it euros? Yeah.
So folks know this is when Bernd says a tandem paper, what he means is, to be clear, it's a paper co-written by a practitioner and an academic,
yes,
as a unified project, which I think is a fantastic, a fantastic development. I'm curious. Yes, Andrea.
So these are the projects that we have funded, but you asked about the four, I would say, the four sub-projects of RENSEP. So with regards to the public education provider section of the organization. So we have launched a peer-reviewed academic journal titled Praxis Knowledge last September. Then we publish regularly on our blog section, and we have also very extensive video section on the platform, so people can join RENSEP and have access to a wide range of content on esoteric practices. Then we have launched in June 2023 our online platform. So this is another important objective that we have, is to create a cognitive and interactional space where scholars and practitioners can meet. So this now can be done online on our platform, and we have forums, research groups, and different online monthly activities where scholars and practitioners can interact and study together primary sources, secondary sources. We are currently focusing, for instance, on Tanya Luhrmann's book, How God Becomes Real. So yes, we are hosting different types of events in order to create exchanges between scholars and practitioners.
And Tanya Luhrmann will also participate in a so-called Ask a Scholar event, which will happen at the end of February or March, and that's why we have these preparatory sessions where interested people can read and discuss her work together.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's amazing. It's a huge amount of projects. It sounds difficult, frankly, to manage so much going on all at once. And I guess that's where I want to take the conversation. Is I'm curious to know what kind of like organizational difficulties you guys have faced in terms of, I can imagine that there are academics who are very skeptical of the practitioner side, and I can imagine there are many practitioners who are like, we don't need a bunch of book nerd people to tell us, I can imagine it can cut both ways. And I also imagine there's a lot of excitement between the two. And so I guess one of the questions I'm wondering is, given that the practice of magic and mysticism have their own set of methodologies, and academia obviously has its own specific methodology. How have you seen those two things interact? What does the synergy look like? Where do they bristle up against each other? Where do they actually complement each other? Do you have any sort of specific instances in which those two things have interacted really well, and other places where they've interacted with a more challenging kind of interaction?
Mhm. Well, I can start. I would say that our approach can be described as a broad interdisciplinarity. So we want to include different disciplines, but also other forms of knowledge. In this case, practitioners' perspectives. And our main objective is to create an environment that empowers the present with the capacity of creating new relations. So we do not necessarily try to control where these interactions are going. We are both interested in creating a synthesis between scholarly and practitioners' approaches, perspectives, but we are also interested in exploring the interferences between these different epistemic registers. So I would say we let people interact how they want on the platform, even if we are also interested in some specific approaches. For instance, I would say that one of the most important aims of RENSEP is the co-production of knowledge, so combining a critical approach with also the objectives that practitioners can have. So in this sense, our approach can be described as post-critical. So we try to go beyond the standard academic critical approach by including also the objectives that practitioners can have in studying esoteric texts. I would say that most of the practitioners that we attract are already academically inclined. So in this sense, there is not much friction between scholarly approaches and their own perspective. On the contrary, they are very much interested in knowing and understanding what academia has to say about their traditions and their practices. So I would say that so far I have not seen much friction between scholars and practitioners, but we also know that we have received some criticism that maybe we can talk a bit about later.
Yeah, or maybe I can add to that. One interesting situation occurred when we launched Praxis Knowledge, and then we realized that whatever wording we use, we will never satisfy all the different parties involved. So, for instance, some of the practitioners accused certain language we used of being ostracizing or ausgrenzend, excluding. Whereas on the other hand, we heard that RENSEP by scholars is perceived as being too sympathetic and too open to practitioners and uncritical in this sense. And we were usually quite puzzled by these reactions, because it shows that no matter what language we use, it evokes stereotypes, and these stereotypes are exactly some of these obstacles that we want to overcome through the work of RENSEP.
Yes, maybe I can give a specific example to illustrate what Bernd was explaining. So since we are including practitioners from many different traditions, we want to create a safe space where everybody can feel that they don't have to defend, that they don't have to face a specific political agenda. So we mention in the platform that RENSEP is apolitical and non-ideological. And this has been interpreted as an exclusion of emancipatory approaches or an exclusion of practitioners who connect their practices to specific political agendas, like emancipating marginalized minorities, the type of approaches that can be found in occulture movements, for instance.
Yeah, it seems to me, and at least in my experience, that if you're making everyone angry, then you're doing something right. So congratulations.
Yeah.
That's been my experience. Do you find that the academics who bristle at the inclusion of practitioner voices on their own terms, do you find that tracks to like a generational divide, or is it a specific? I mean, again, we're not going to name names because that's not going to be a thing. But do you find that it's do you find that it tracks to any sort of specific philosophical positions, or is it generational? Because I guess I would say is that it seems to me that most of the younger academics that I know are very enthusiastic about this, whereas I've
Mm,
spoken to a previous generation of academics, much more guarded. And I think that
mm,
part of that, I think that part of that is that they had to do all the hard work to legitimate this field at all,
mm,
and you know, they got called all kinds of names by other academics that they were, engaging in, secret stuff, and it was all wizard school, and so they had to fight hard to get this stuff to go, and the worry is, um, that another generation will come later and
mm,
reveal. In fact, it was Hogwarts all along. So there's sort of a respectability concerned around the respectability of Western esotericism as an academic discipline. But
mm.
does that track at all?
So I would say that it's not related to age or generation. Uh, I would say that overall we had very positive feedback from the scholarly community, and the negative feedback we received is independent of age. I would say so. It's not related to this historical argument that you just mentioned, even though it's obviously there. But I know very senior scholars in the field who are very enthusiastic about RENSEP. And I think the overall perception is that we have now shown that esotericism can be a respected academic field for one generation, basically 20 years.
Right.
And now we can move on. We can open up and include new perspectives, and also destabilize these boundaries a bit, which have been established. I mean, this goes into various directions. Also, the transcending the West debate and so on. So many things are happening right now that expand and also diversify the study of esotericism.
And I guess a sort of an adjacent question is methodologically. It seems that, I mean, again, there must be like a real field of methodologies at work, and in the sense of even within specific branches of esoteric practice, there are various kinds of methodologies. But in general, I mean, again, we can talk about whether this is true or not. That academia has a very specific methodology, a sort of pretty tried and true. Whether it works in practice or not is a wholly different question. But what have been some of the more surprising things about how those methodologies have interacted? Because I can imagine they can often come at questions in very, very different ways, and also I can imagine that what would be constitutive of a solution or a rectification or a proof, right, of evidence, even what is constitutive of evidence,
Mm.
is quite a huge range. And I'm curious to hear about any sort of, I don't know, surprising or interesting ways in which methodological conflict or methodological synergy has emerged, because I imagine that it must. It can't not, given the fact that there is a real plurality of methodologies. And so I'm curious to hear about how those kinds of things have sort of developed and percolated in the wild.
So RENSEP itself, we are more a forum where many people gather who may have many different methodologies. We are not yet in the position to develop our own unique methodology, or kind of push the direction, push the debate into a certain direction, except maybe with regard to practitioner scholarship. So this is really one thing where we want to move forward and kind of complexualize the debate, or actually open up a transparent debate. And I can talk a bit about that, because this is also very close to my personal interests, and I've recently developed a methodology for doing practitioner scholarship in a way that speaks to practitioners and is applicable by practitioners, but also allows to include experience reports in academic data that are perceived as scholarly valid, if you like. But before doing that, I would like to add one more nuance, namely with regard to what you called naturalism. Andrea, do you want to say a word about that?
You mean critical naturalism?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, maybe. Well, so when we host these online events involving practitioners and scholars, I noticed that practitioners are especially interested in comparing different practices and perhaps discovering universal phenomenological aspects of practice. And I would say that an approach that is particularly important both for Bernd and I is builds on the work of Anne Taves and Igor Asprem and can be called critical naturalism. So it's the combination of a social constructivist position and a realist one. For instance, we would like to use Anne Taves' inventory of non-ordinary experiences to build a database of experience reports. And I think this is where practitioners' interest and scholarly interest can really converge, because it's connected to understanding the efficacy of esoteric practices in a cross-cultural way. And I think that many practitioners, especially in Western countries, are interested in this approach.
Mm-hmm.
And Bernd, could you say more about the methodology you've developed? Because I think many people are very interested about this this interaction, between these, because it seems to me it's going much further than even the kind of Geertzian sort of religious anthropology. Right? It seems like it's going further than that, and I can imagine that's both very exciting, and also I can imagine it can raise eyebrows. So I'm curious about the methodology that you've been working with.
So it's a longer story. I try to explain it in a nutshell. So basically, when studying esoteric practices, and RENSEP is really a praxeological project, so we want to put practices into the foreground, whereas worldviews, theories, ideas, and so on, concepts, they take a backseat. So we want to really study and understand practices. And for doing so, I've just written a programmatic paper where I argue that we could best identify practice through combining four things. Namely, one is descriptions of practices, so people observe a practice from the outside. The second is the prescription, so the script. You get a manual for what to do. There are many textual scripts, as we all know, grimoires and so on, but there may also be oral scripts when you receive training in a fieldwork situation, for instance. And these two domains, they have been studied quite extensively. So we have a lot of data on descriptions of practices, but also of prescriptions. So we have an ever larger, let's say, database of scripts, of manuals. But the domain that has been neglected so far a bit is the experience report. So what happens when you practice a script? Obviously, many things happen, and most of them, they are not mentioned in the script. So here's an important new genre that we have to take into account: what happens when you practice a script. So these are three domains, and then I argue that a fourth domain needs to be added, which is the practitioner scholarship element. And why do I think this is important? Because, and now we can begin a philosophical discussion, but overall, I would say experiencing something from the within is always different. I'm not saying it's better, but it's different. It adds an important facet to understanding a phenomenon when you just observe it from the outside or read a text or a prescription or an experience report. You will always understand certain things in new and different ways when you practice yourself, even if it's not super sophisticated, even if you don't have 20 years of training in conjuring spirits, you will always learn something. And my argument is that if scholars either begin doing that or come out of the closet, if they have done it for the past decades and not mentioned it at all in their scholarly works, this can be done in a way that is scientifically legit, I would say, and this happens through 3 ingredients, which is radical agnosticism, careful self-observation, and sensuous autoethnography. So I will briefly go into these 3 things. Radical agnosticism means that even if you practice and then have a very, let's say you have a very intense experience of a spirit encounter or something, then you can still apply this agnostic methodology or methodological agnosticism that most scholars today have been trained to apply when they read a text, for instance, a historical text. So basically, you never know what the ultimate truth is. You can only work with the data that you have. But when you have a spirit encounter experience, then you also have sensuous data. For instance, you have goosebumps, or you get dizzy, or you suddenly have an aural, a sonic vision, or a visual vision, or other internal phenomena that are not supported by the external senses. Then you can still very carefully observe these different elements or aspects of the experience and then note them down. And now we have all the 3 ingredients. We have agnosticism. So even if you, for instance, conjure Baal and you have goosebumps, become dizzy, and hear weird stuff in your head, this doesn't automatically say that Baal has appeared, but it says that you have goosebumps, dizziness, and a sonic vision. And this is the experience you noted down. This is what I mean by careful self-observation. So you try to disentangle the senses as nuanced as possible. And then comes the 3rd element, is the sensuous autoethnography. And I'm here inspired by a few recent works in autoethnography, especially by Paul Stoller, where you can write autoethnography, and in this case, even the autoethnography of an esoteric experience or an intense experience. You can write it down in a very nuanced and accurate way. And I'm stressing these things because they lead to the production, to experience report, which are exceptionally accurate, if you like. This also relates to the advantages of doing that, because you can train yourself to become better and better in what Tanja Luhrmann calls inner sense cultivation, but also in noting down experience reports in ways that they can really contribute to the academic database of experience reports, which can then be compared in meaningful ways. And I'm stressing these things because it may differ a bit, but it may also be similar to what many practitioners experience. So I'm not suggesting that practitioners are easy believers. To the contrary, so most practitioners I know, they are also many of them are agnostic in a certain way. They are certainly no easy believers, and so on and so forth. So I think also there are convergent points between scholars and practitioners, if you like. But of course, I'm pushing the boundary. Some of these things, they will be disputed in academia. There's a long history of neglecting the first person point of view in academic research, because you literally leave the idea of objective data production, if you like, which is hard in the humanities anyway. But still, there are many voices in the contemporary debate that would suggest that you are allowed to include an experience report by someone else, but never by yourself. And I want to break up this idea through let's say, a systematic methodology for doing practitioner scholarship and for practicing practices in the way they are experienced, namely through embodiment, performance, and experience, and by producing a new set of data that may advance and improve our academic understanding of esoteric practices. I stop here. It's a longer story. So these are just the core elements of a methodology that I've been developing.
Right. It reminds me, I remember reading Arthur Versluis when I was younger, and Versluis makes the argument, controversial argument, that esoteric texts can't really even be understood outside of the phenomenology of
Mm.
of what inspired them. And I've always found that position to be alarming and compelling. And I find that there's something very interesting about that. And in some sense, like I appreciate the idea that um, that there's no non-implication of the academic in this material. Like you're always implicated, and there's sort of a weird thing where we pretend as academics that we're not, but we are. And I think that part of what's exciting about this, and I'll get to this question about the broom closet in a second, is that it seems that when I was at the HHP in Amsterdam, and when I've been in esoteric circles with people, who are academics, it's always surprising to me when I don't meet a practitioner, when I meet just a dodgy old historiographer, like
But they
um,
still exist.
they still exist. Oh yeah, I know they still
Yeah.
exist. I'm one of them. I'm one of probably the last generation of them. But but what's sad to me, and what makes me quite angry actually, is the amount of religious bigotry that I understand hearing from esoteric practitioners that they experience, in a way that no one's going to bat an eye if I want to study Kabbalah academically. No one ever says, like, yeah, Gershom Scholem, Moshe Adel, those guys are compromised. They can't really study Kabbalah because, maybe they're up to it. In a way that for Wicca and Thelema and other kinds of esoteric practices, it seems like there's a great deal more hostility. And I'm wondering, are you finding that RENSEP is allowing people, academics who are also practitioners, to be more open about those practices? And do you think that it's creating an environment in which those kinds of um, that kind of, again, you talk about a safe space, and I think that term has been much maligned, but this is a space where I really do hope that that academic practitioners who are also academics can also be more out about their positions. Have you seen more movement in that direction because of RENSEP or in RENSEP spaces?
Well, I would say that since we have launched RENSEP, we have been contacted by many scholars who are actually also practitioners and who are waiting for an opportunity to come out of the closet. So I would say that yes, we are playing a role. But I also think that the main problem does not lie within the field of esotericism itself, because if you go, for instance, at an SWE conference, and if you say that you're a practitioner, that would hardly surprise anyone.
Right.
But I think that the problem comes when you communicate with a broader academic audience. And I think that in that regards, there are still stereotypes that need to be challenged. I think there is still a perception that esoteric practitioners or occultists are inherently bad people because they are using occult powers for their own egoistic purposes. So I think that there is a general misperception that doesn't help scholar practitioners to come out of the closet. And in that area, I think that organizations such as RENSEP can really play a role in destabilizing these stereotypes.
And is that something that RENSEP is self-consciously doing, like to disrupt those kinds of stereotypes? Because I think when I'm thinking back to the four things you're describing, that didn't seem explicitly one of them, but it almost seems implicit in the.
Well, for us, it's part of the public education scope. One of the objectives is precisely to destabilize stereotypes about esoteric practitioners.
So I would add that there are quite elaborate discussions about practitioner scholarship going on in other fields already. And I've recently did a bit of research, and I was quite surprised, for instance, that there is a quite elaborate debate in Pentecostal studies. Pentecostal theologians, they develop numerous pneumatologien, obviously from a position that unites the scholar and the Pentecostal practitioner. There is also martial arts studies, which is quite a new thing, but obviously all these people are practitioners. And then another area where it becomes more and more important is meditation, and especially Vipassana research. So there are quite elaborate and productive discourses going on, and we might even say that esotericism is like the last unicorn where this is perceived as problematic for whatever reason. And yes, I would explicitly say that RENSEP is here to change that game. And this also relates to my motivation behind developing this practitioner scholarship methodology. And I think we would not say that we are sparking this, but it's really timely. It's going on anyway, and we are just, I would say we're coming in time to give this a more institutionalized structure and a stronger voice. And as I see it, the fresh generation of current PhD students and also recently submitted PhDs, they show that the debate is moving into this direction anyway. So these stereotypes, they are about to, I think, go into the trash bin.
Well, maybe I would like just to add something to what Bernd just said. Since you are interested in philosophy, Justin, I believe that the kind of work that RENSEP is in need of is in the area of philosophy of religious studies, because what Bernd explained also, I think, connects to the hegemony of a language of detachment in academia. So there is this perception that subjective experiences or an emotional attachment to a text that one is studying is synonymous with bad scholarship, basically. And I think that some work can be done in that area to challenge this hegemony of a language of detachment, and also show that critical approaches are possible while being attached to a particular teaching, for instance, or a particular text.
Right. It's always seemed strange to me that this idea, this goal of detachment, when I can't. It's always struck me as like a performative contradiction. Of course, you're attached to a text. You've been studying it for 10 years. It just like there's just something that seems like, it just there's something about the performance of that where everyone's doing it and everyone's telling themselves they're doing one thing, but no one's actually doing that. I don't know. It just like the performative contradiction that's inherent in that seems so strikingly silly to me. Like you're in the text whether you like it or not, whether you have that kind of relationship with it. And even if the relationship is one of antagonism, divorce is a relationship. So what have been some of the big successes that you guys have had so far with RENSEP? I know it's only been a year and a bit, but what are some of the things that you guys are proud of the organization having accomplished so far?
Andrea, what are you proud of?
Well, I think we can be proud that we launched RENSEP in the first place. So it's a very young organization still, but I think we can be proud that in such a short period of time we managed to establish a good reputation for the organization. We can be proud of our network of scholars and practitioners that participate in our activities and support what we are doing. In terms of funded projects, I think we can be particularly proud of the experimental research on the efficacy of sigil magic. I know that many people can consider this kind of research as fringe science, and we are not saying that this is the ultimate experimental research on magic, but we believe that it starts a discussion. I believe that we need more experimental studies on magic, and I'm glad that we started going in that direction. Yeah, and finally, I would say that launching a peer-reviewed journal focusing on the co-production of knowledge between scholars and practitioners and on practitioner scholarship is also another important achievement.
Yeah, I would say that those are all incredible achievements in just a little over, a year and change. It's all really, really amazing stuff. What does the future for RENSEP look like? What do you guys? I know that you said you're slowing down a little bit, but what are some future directions that you hope for the organization to be going?
Yeah, one of the key objectives is to become more sustainable finance-wise. As Andrea said, we are a private association, and we are in the process of doing that, and hopefully with good results. And a second big thing that we would like to do is to build up databases. This requires time and energy and funding, but we think we have several ideas for databases, as has already been said, for instance, of experience reports, esoteric experiences of all sorts, but also databases of historical texts. For instance, there's still no coherent database, for instance, on magical texts online. So this is another idea that we have in the pipeline, but we need more funds and manpower for doing that. A third thing that we are looking forward to is to onboarding more members, and especially practitioners from different areas, especially non-Western practitioners, where we feel that we do not really represent certain traditions. So we see RENSEP in the future to be much bigger than now, with camps, I don't know, in Tantra or in Taoism, or I don't know, in African divination or letterism and so on. And right now we have like a handful of practitioners in each field, but we really want to have this as a large grassroots network where many things will come out of the network and lead to a very lively atmosphere where you can just go onto RENSEP. Oh, I need to know this and that, and you already know that you will have 20 people there who are experts. So this is one of the visions, and we have started, but we see that there is a lot of room to grow.
So if folks want to get involved with RENSEP, either as practitioners or scholars or both, where can they get access to where this is all happening?
They can go on our web platform at rensep.org, or they can reach us on social media using the handle at rensep_official.
Yep, and I'll have that in the description, so you can find those links there. Gentlemen, I'm really excited for the work you guys are doing. I want to thank you for the work you're doing. I think it's a really pioneering work. I think it's brave work. I think that often academics don't want to be the first ones to put their heads up for fear of having them cut off. And so I appreciate the bravery that goes into doing something novel, doing something disruptive, and in the interest of really pushing this field that we all work in forward. So thank you both, and again, not just you guys, but everyone involved with RENSEP. I just want to say thank you all very much.
Thank you, Justin, for having us. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Justin, also for your work.
Thank you, guys.